Hello friends, Jennifer Pearson here, Thistle Gypsy. So a bit of a report on the Weaver's Oracle and my ability or inability to relate to these marvelous characters. So I'll tell you, it's not going as well as I would have liked. But we're not done with January yet, so we'll see. But you could say that I've begun to employ desperate measures. What happened here? These must be the ones. So I've looked through the deck and was really struggling to, can I see the charm in this woman with her skinny little fingers and her missing tooth or teeth? Absolutely. Yeah. And this gal, and as you know, I said in another video, this gal's one of my favorites. So that I don't have a problem with. Liking them, I don't have a problem with. But thinking of them as something, as images that have potential to provide answers or intuitive, as being, I would say, maybe intuitive doorways that I could enter into and receive a message from a question that I've asked. I remain skeptical. I remain very skeptical. But I wasn't ready to give up entirely, and I haven't given up entirely, but my desperate measure is this. Well, I did a couple of things. One of the things I did was I went through and I just sort of wrote down, what is she? She's 10. Let me see if I can find 10. Just what to me was prominent in a given card. You know, like if I'm just briefly looking at the card, what do I see as prominent features within that card? And some of them I had maybe as many as, 4 brief sentences. Like here's one that was: one bare breast, sad/spacey look, shawl over shoulder, orange. So those are just things that were immediate responses for me when I looked at the card. For her, I had close-up, round face, missing teeth, skinny fingers. So those are all like physical features, visual features. They aren't an emotional response. But see, but this is how I think I'm going to have to enter these cards, is I'm going to have to come up with these kinds of well, the word that initially came to mind was gimmicky, but you know, how am I going to enter? How am I going to get in there? What pry bar am I going to use to get into the card and see it as a divination tool? If I were going to write a paragraph that were to represent what this card would mean when I pulled it, how am I going to do that? You know, some people might do talking, giving the person a name. the names the deck creator gave don't work for me. But see, if even if I were to do that and then try to have a conversation, but even if I were to do that, let's say with her, and we'll call her an everyday name and just call her Cynthia or Cindy. It's like, what would I ask her? What's your advice on finances, Cindy? Well, you know, it hasn't been a major focus in my life. So, you know, I'm skeptical that if I were to take that route, that I would come up with anything all that meaningful. I wasn't just then. But say I was to ask something more broad, like you would ask an older person, like, you know, what is the secret to happiness? Living a happy life. And I'm skeptical that if I were to sit down and write, like say do a 7-minute or 5-minute free write, that I would come up with anything terribly useful, let alone profound. I mean, I can give it a try, I suppose, but that's why I'm resorting to what I think of as gimmicks, other ways to build some layers on top of the images that might help me derive a meaning from these cards. And what I'm turning to as my gimmick is bibliomancy. And I'm not being as disciplined in my bibliomancy as I might be, as I could potentially have shoehorned myself into being. Sorry. Which would mean that I would open it to well, there's a good one. I just looked up and I saw Italo Calvino's Italian folk tales. That would probably be a good one to grab down and use for these. But would be to crack open whatever it is I'm using. And, you know, either the first thing my eyes lit onto or at least stay within the pages I have open. Now, I started out using a dictionary, and I didn't know if a dictionary would be all that I would need, and I would just get sort of some keywords out of the dictionary. I'm thinking not. I'm thinking I'll probably try some other things, and so I just looked up and saw that Italian folk tales. I was thinking maybe I've got lots of books of poetry and, you know, heavier volumes, you know, that have several different centuries or international poetry, and God knows I've got poetry coming out my ears here. But, you know, I could certainly use Italian folk tales. I've got Shakespeare somewhere in this house. I've got Shakespeare. And I could crack open, you know, and I think it's like a complete collected volume. I think I've got a really thick thing of Shakespeare. You know, I could crack it open and just take a quote from Shakespeare and see if I can do that and gather some things that make sense. You know, a collection of those kinds of impressions, those bibliomantic gatherings, impressions, to get me started on these cards, or whether they will just be no starters, which I still hate to admit the possibility of that, but it is a possibility. So let's see, for number 10, so I'll show you what I got from my bibliomancy. I never strayed too far from the initial page I opened up to, but some of them I did go page before, the page after. So for number 10, I got souvenir. And so I was always wondering about this mirror, so maybe it's an heirloom or a souvenir. For 12, I got ulterior umbrage ultraviolet. For Miss Smiling Miss 12 here, I got, 32, excuse me, she's 32. I got legacy, lend, and lenient. So as you see, sometimes I didn't stop with one. Most of them I have 3. For this, my favorite, one of my favorites here, I got chameleon, channel, and chant. So it has potential, this method of madness. But I'm not sure what it will amount to, if it will amount to anything. One of the problems with this method is that since it's not derived in the image itself, you know, I don't look at her and automatically go, oh yes, souvenir. I don't do that. And so I would have to either, and it wouldn't be too hard to do that if I don't get carried away and just collect from a few other sources over the course of the month here. And then put them together on a page and end up using that as a guidebook. It's a possibility, or even using them as an additional point. So I would maybe have Miss Souvenir here and sit down with a page with looking at her, having the word souvenir, and whatever other bibliomantic gatherings I collect for her, and then start to do a free write, a 5 or 7 minute free write where I'm just sort of riffing on all of these things to see if they meld together into anything that would be meaningful when I look at this card, would come up and say, oh yes, I know that lady. She's Miss Souvenir, and you know, she's X quote from Shakespeare, and she's, you know, whatever else I come up with. So that's where I'm at. I just thought I would give a little report. This preserves it for me too, because I'm about to have these studies disrupted for, or will have these studies disrupted. In a couple of days, there will be a disruption in general in my life habits, and it's kind of like, you know, I never know what I'll retain after something like that. It's why I don't like to get out of my routines very much. It's because I never know what I'm going to lose along the way. Yeah, so there it is. I thought I would just make a little, my weekly report on how my attempts to relate differently to the weavers is going. All right, everybody. Take care. Have a wonderful week ahead. Bye-bye.